Okay, guys, we have some big developments with regards to Starbucks. Now, as you all know, there is a union movement spreading across Starbucks like wildfire. We've already had a number of stores unionized. We have more than 100 that are set to vote. And this thing just continues to pick up steam. Apparently, the execs over at Starbucks are sort of freaking out because their attempts to union bust, not only did they fall flat, I think they completely backfired. They only made the case for a union that much stronger. So they kicked out the old CEO. They brought back Howard Schultz, who of course was the founder of Starbucks, and we'll get to in a moment, has a long history and lots of experience at union busting. And in his first town hall meeting, had some very revealing things to say about how he views the union effort. Let's take a listen.
Now, here's where it gets a little sensitive, because I've been coached a little bit, but I do want to talk about something pretty serious. We can't ignore what is happening in the country as it relates to companies throughout the country being assaulted in many ways by the threat of unionization.
Assaulted by the threat of unionization. Let's just be clear. All a union means is that your workers have a voice and some power and a little bit of democratic say in what goes on in their workplace. That is not an assault. It's not an existential threat. Starbucks is doing just fine in terms of their profit margin. Howard Schultz is extraordinarily wealthy. This guy never has to worry. But they see this as an outright assault. And it also is particularly jarring for Starbucks with the type of language that they typically use about their baristas, and I don't remember if they call them like partners or whatever, their sort of like languages around it, and they have on their website all this fuzzy language about uplift and how much they care about these people. But when it comes to, and they're happy to give them, you know, they have better wages than some places in the food industry. They have better benefits than some places in the food industry. They're okay with doing that because it's like part of the way that they virtue signal in their brand. But when it comes to workers having an actual say and a little bit of power, absolutely not. They consider that a completely existential threat. And they're willing to go to some pretty extreme lengths in order to try to stop this union movement in its tracks. Here is the very first big move that Howard Schultz is making now, reinstated as CEO of Starbucks. He is scrapping, and this for them is a really big deal.
This is a huge deal.
Scrapping stock buybacks to, quote, invest more profit into our people. Let me read you a little bit from this piece. In a letter on Monday to employees, customers, investors, and others titled On the Future of Starbucks, Schultz announced the company would suspend stock buybacks immediately. It's his first act on his first day back in the top job, which he held twice before. He said stopping buybacks would allow Starbucks to, quote, invest more profit into our people in our stores, the only way to create long-term value for our stakeholders. And here's the more of the context. Starbucks spent $10 billion on buybacks in 2019, paused them at the start of the pandemic, but recently resumed the practice, spending $3.5 billion on buybacks in its most recent quarter, which ended in early January. In October, Starbucks said it would spend $20 billion on buybacks and dividends over the next 3 years, which is obviously an extraordinary giveaway to shareholders and investors. That's the way you should think about stock buybacks. And so they are so desperate to stop this union movement that they will even agree to keep, to stop giving away the whole store to the investors and the shareholders to try to signal to their workers that they're going to do better. The bottom line is, though, workers should not have to depend on the goodwill and largesse of billionaires in order to have a decent workplace. All they want is a little bit of say in what is their day-to-day life. That's it. And no amount of investor announcements is going to be able to stop that sentiment within these Starbucks across the country.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to be said here. And I actually kind of look at it as a win-win, which is on the one hand, we finally stopped a company from doing stock buybacks. Great, this is a good thing. Now it's really, what it should be, which is that because of balance and pressure from the workforce, they're like, well, if we don't want to deal with these unions, we're going to have to pay people a hell of a lot more and give them power.
Yep.
So they either get paid.
Not give them power.
Yeah, not too much.
Give them power.
Right.
But we'll give them a little more. We'll give them a little better benefits. We might give them a little pay raise. Power, absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, but win-win, right? I mean, like on one hand, you either get more money or they join a union and they fight you and then they're going to make even more money. So this is one of those areas where even the threat of it itself can significantly impact.
It shows you how
corporate
powerful it is.
behavior.
Amazon did the same thing.
Exactly.
They had to after the Bessemer effort, which the first time around really didn't even come close. But even just that first little threat of unionization, they totally tried to reframe how they were talking about workers. They said they want to be the best employer on the planet. They upped some of the benefits and some of the wages to try to, again, stem the tide. So it really does show you the power of these movements, that even when they don't end up forming a union and workers actually having direct power and direct say in their workplace, it forces these corporate titans into making some concessions, which is pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, so, and let's go and put C4 up there on the screen. This is something we want to keep everybody updated on, which is don't take this all 100%, as a good thing. Layla Dalton, who was an organizer for Starbucks Workers United, was just fired by Starbucks. And you actually pointed out, Krystal, that in an interview that she gave, she said to Jacobin, my goal is to unionize the entire food industry. Starbucks is a big corporation, but there are many other fast food places. There are many health hazards that happen on a day-to-day basis because of understaffing or improper working conditions. You're serving customers, cleaning and getting sanitizer, washing your hands. It's hard. I think some people deal with not only Starbucks, but say McDonald's and Wendy's too. So I want the whole food industry to know it's possible to unionize. And just as Mr. Schultz takes helm of the company and accuses people like her of assault, she is summarily fired from that company. So it's not, by the way, that is illegal if you can prove it, but it's very hard to prove.
There's a lot to say about this. First of all, I just think these standard union busting tactics, not only do I not think that they're working, I think they're backfiring it. And we see that with Amazon. I mean, Starbucks should go and ask Amazon how it goes for them, how it went for them when they fired Christian Smalls before they fire more of these worker organizers. And Layla is not the first one to get the axe, by the way. I think that there is a new climate of worker boldness, a genuine sort of uprising, where normally these tactics, what are they intended to do? They're intended to scare people. They're intended to enforce and demand compliance because you're just too afraid to even vote yes on the union or stand up for yourself at all. Instead, what I see, and what certainly was the case at Amazon, is it just pissed people off. It made them more committed to the cause because people see, someone like Layla, who was a leader within her store. The people she works with, they know who she is. They know what a good worker she was. They know that her firing was completely unfair. And they also see the way that she was unafraid of standing up for herself. Same thing with Christian Smalls. This is one of the things, the stories that keeps coming out of the Amazon organizing effort, is that they very intentionally created a culture of boldness and a culture of risk-taking to demonstrate to the people around them, you don't have to be afraid of these people. You don't have to be afraid of these managers. You don't have to be afraid of Amazon. You have rights, and if we stand together, we actually are powerful and we actually can cause their capitulation on key issues. Because of the labor landscape as it exists today, where by and large, the problem isn't getting a job. The problem is getting a good job. That also creates a climate of boldness because workers feel like, all right, the worst you're going to do to me is you're going to fire me. Guess what? I can get another crappy low-wage job. This one is not all that special right now. What they are in the fight for is to have some say and to have living wages, decent benefits at the workplace that they're at. Christian, actually, we played it yesterday, said something that was kind of revolutionary that I don't know if you guys caught it. But he said, we're not quitting our jobs anymore. We're going to unionize. That represents a sea change in how workers have viewed their employment and viewed the workforce. No, I'm not just leaving and getting another gig. You don't have that power over me anymore. I'm going to force you to make this job that I have right now into a good job. So I just have this sense, and we'll see what the impact here of Layla being fired is, but I just have this sense that these tactics, they are not working. They are completely backfiring. We saw it in Buffalo too. Remember, Howard Schultz came in and made that weird like Holocaust analogy that everyone was like, what is this all about? They, flooded the zone with all these corporate executives and these captive audience meetings and every other tactic they could think of. And it didn't work. And not only did it not work, I really think that is part of why you have seen this take off in the way that it has. So listen, Layla, I really hope for the best for her. I know she has big ambitions. I hope she stays engaged in the labor movement. And I think that this movement is only going to continue to grow. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg.
I think in the social media age, you're right. This is not 1896 where you can just disappear people, and own the with the internet and with organization, Twitter, and the open channels of communication. I do think it's just impossible, and especially people like us who bring attention and who talk about it. So I expect that there will be a backlash. And like we said, even this is a victory. Stopping stock buybacks and making them pay more in salary, that is a titanic shift in corporate behavior in the span of, what, a year relative to how they were conducting themselves previously. So let's keep it going.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.